My name is Veronica. I'm 32 years old. And on the day I was supposed to say, I do, my younger sister stood up among the flowers and cameras and said, very calmly, I'm in love with Peter. For a heartbeat, the room forgot how to breathe. It was the sound that hit me first. The scrape of a chair, the small gasp someone tried to swallow, the sudden hush that made the violinist's bow tremble. My bouquet felt heavier. The veil pulled at my hair. I remember thinking absurdly that the peonies were too pink. Simona didn't cry. She didn't shake. She just stared at me with that soft, rehearsed expression she always used when she wanted something and said, I'm sorry, V, but I can't keep quiet. Peter should choose. He and I, we've already... She let the sentence dangle like a lit match over gasoline. Then she pressed a hand to her flat stomach. I think I might be pregnant. I don't remember dropping the bouquet, but later someone told me it hit the marble with a sound like a broken bone. Peter spun toward her as if a magnet yanked him by the ribs. Simona, what are you talking about? His face had drained to paper. Around us, everything blurred. The arch of white roses, the row of smiling guests frozen into portraits, the priest clearing his throat like he could clear the entire moment from existence. My mother, Sarah, stood first. Of course she did. Pearls, pressed lips, perfect posture. Simona, she said, voice full of tremor and tenderness that was never for me. Sweetheart, are you sure? My father, Walter, didn't stand. He watched, weighed, calculated. His eyes slid from Simona to me to Peter, as if the math might arrange itself if he stared long enough. Nothing happened, Peter said louder now, a plea aimed at me. V, I swear to you. But Simona had already turned to the guests. She knew her audience. I know this is awful timing. I'm not trying to ruin anything. I can't pretend. She let her voice crack on the last word like a crystal glass. My stomach flipped. Not from belief, from recognition. I grew up with that voice. The one that made adults lean forward, worried, eager to help, ready to forgive what hadn't even been confessed. I took one step back, then another. Somewhere behind me, Alex, my best friend, said my name in a way that meant, I'm here. I wanted to turn, to leave, to wake up, to do anything but stand under 1,000 blinking eyes and try to count the seconds of my own humiliation. Stop! My voice sounded thin. We're not doing this here. Veronica, my mother said, as if coaxing a toddler from a tantrum. Let's be adults. If there's a child involved, there isn't, I snapped before I could stop myself. It came from a part of me that knew Simona better than anyone. The part that remembered the times she'd pretended to faint when chores started, the stolen cash from my wallet that somehow I had to apologize for, the way she could tilt a room, the way a child tilts a snow globe, just to watch the world whirl. Peter took a step toward me. V, please look at me. I did, and I saw it. The thing I hadn't wanted to name for months. Not guilt, not love, fear. The kind that belongs to a person who can't hold a line when someone pushes hard enough. The weeks leading up to the wedding had been a wall of small red flags. I decorated with excuses, late-night texts with no explanation. She needed a ride. It was nothing. The way my mother suddenly asked Simona to help Peter choose cufflinks, the strange moment I walked into the kitchen and found them whispering, then laughing too quickly when they saw me. Pre-wedding nerves, I told myself. He's kind, he's tired, I'm overthinking. In that chapel, under a crown of flowers, I realized I had been bargaining with a storm. Peter, my voice steadied. How did you sleep with my sister? He shook his head so fast it looked like panic. No, never. I swear to you on everything. Simona's eyes glistened. I know what I know, she said softly. I know how he looked at me. I know what he said. I know how it feels, Veronica. She put her palm on her stomach again, like a stage mark. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not, but if I'm right, you deserve to know. My father finally stood. We will handle this privately, he declared, voice low, not looking at me, not touching my shoulder, not offering the smallest anchor. He stepped toward Simona, toward the performance he preferred. The room tilted. I wanted my mother to hold my face and say, I believe you. I wanted my father to tell Simona to sit down, to apologize, to leave. I wanted Peter to grab my hand and say, "Let's go." Now. What I got was my mother's outstretched arm toward Simona. "It's okay," she whispered to her. "We'll take care of you." There are moments you can pinpoint like pushpins on a map, the place where one version of your life ends and another, colder one begins. Mine is a strip of white runner beneath my shoes, dotted with the petals I was supposed to walk over toward a promise. Instead, I stood still, as if the floor had hardened into glass and any movement would shatter it. Alex found my hand. "Veronica," she whispered, "we can leave." Peter reached for me too, his fingers hovering an inch from my wrist. "V, please, just give me a minute to fix this." "Fix," I said. I didn't recognize my own voice. Calm, clear. "You can't fix this?" Simona stepped closer. "If you love him, let him choose," she said. Soft, reasonable. Poison disguised as mercy. And the worst part, the part I will never forgive myself for, was that I waited. A full breath, maybe two, long enough to give him space, long enough to give him a stage. Peter looked at me, then at her. And in that empty half second, the choice was already made. "I need to talk to Simona," he said. The sound in the room changed, just the smallest shift, like a flock of birds lifting from a wire, approval from the people who had always decided what our family should look like. My mother nodded, already gathering Simona with her eyes. My father exhaled like a deal had landed. Alex squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. "We're done here," she said louder for both of us. I pulled the veil from my hair. I didn't throw it. I folded it once, twice, set it gently on the chair beside the aisle like something I would not be taking with me. I straightened my back. I was shaking. But I walked. Past the flowers. Past the faces that wouldn't meet my eyes. Past my father's silence and my mother's busy, eager concern. Past Peter's outstretched mouth, forming my name too late. Outside the air was cold. The sky was so bright it felt cruel. Alex shrugged off her jacket and put it around my shoulders. "Do you want me to punch him?" she asked. I surprised us both by laughing. It broke in the middle and turned into a sob. In the hours that followed, the story rewrote itself without me. Whispers became opinions, opinions became versions, versions became truths. Simona was brave to speak up. Imagine if she had stayed silent. Peter is torn, poor thing. And me. I was the cautionary tale, the woman who planned a wedding and forgot to plan for betrayal. I didn't go home that night. I didn't answer my mother's texts. "Be reasonable, Veronica, we can still make this right." Or my father's. "We expect you at dinner." I sat on Alex's couch in a dress I hadn't chosen to take off and counted the minutes until morning like a penance. When dawn finally bled into the blinds, I knew 3 things. 1. Simona had lied about the pregnancy. I didn't need a test to know, I knew my sister. 2. Peter might not have touched her, but he had already failed the only test that mattered. 3. If I stayed, they would keep writing my life for me, so I left. Not just the venue, not just the house, not just the city. I left the version of myself who waited for anyone to choose me. 6 years later, I would have a different life. A small café with Alex, a laugh that didn't break, a man named Chris who didn't flinch when storms rolled in. But that's not this chapter. This chapter ends with a door closing behind me and the sound of my mother's ringtone buzzing through a purse I no longer carried. It ends with the knowledge that I was alone again, only this time I would build something from it. Before I go on, let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone you love hesitate just long enough to lose you? Have you ever felt the ground fall away and decided, in that free fall, that you're the one who will build the parachute? Tell me where you're watching from in the comments. If this hit a nerve, tap subscribe, like the video, and stay with me. Because the next time Peter called me 6 years later, he said 4 words that reopened every wound. I think I made a mistake. You know how I knew my younger sister wasn't pregnant the day she ruined my wedding? Because for Simona, lies and breathing were the same thing. She could bend a story before she even understood what truth was. By the time we were both old enough to talk, I was already learning what it meant to live in her shadow. When I was 6 and she was 4, she figured out that a single scream could flip the world in her favor. I still remember the day she dropped my mother's favorite vase, bright blue, a wedding gift from my grandmother. It shattered across the hardwood floor. I stood there, frozen, while Simona's eyes flicked to me. And then she wailed. Veronica pushed me. I hadn't even moved, but my mother swept her up, tears and all, and scolded me for being too rough. That night, I went to bed without dessert. Simona got extra ice cream to calm her nerves. It never stopped. If she wanted a toy, she found a way to make me hand it over. If she failed a test, she cried until Dad called the teacher unfair. When she wanted to sneak out to a party, she told our parents I was the bad influence. So I got grounded while she slipped out the door in a short dress and borrowed lipstick. You might think I'm exaggerating. I wish I were. But when you grow up with a sister who can fake tears as easily as tying her shoes, you stop expecting fairness. And yet, I kept hoping. I studied harder. I cleaned my plate, folded my laundry, stayed out of trouble. I thought if I was perfect enough, they'd see me. They'd balance the scales. But in our house, love wasn't balanced. It was rationed, and Simona held the key. My mother adored her. She said Simona had spirit. She laughed at her tantrums, called her passionate. When Simona lied, Mom brushed it off as imagination. My father wasn't as blind, but he was tired. He worked long hours, and when he came home, the last thing he wanted was another argument. So when Simona played the victim, he sighed, rubbed his temples, and told me, "Just let it go, V. Don't make waves." So I didn't, for years. I remember once when I was 12, I entered a science fair. I built a solar system out of painted spheres, each one strung carefully on wire. I worked for weeks. On the morning of the fair, I found my project smashed in the garage. Paint smeared, wires twisted, planets crushed. Simona shrugged. Accident. When I tried to explain to Mom, she shook her head. Don't be jealous, Veronica. Maybe next year. Simona walked away holding the ribbon she'd stolen from my box of supplies, wearing it in her hair like a crown. I learned something that day. My sister didn't need to succeed. She only needed to destroy me, and the world would still call her special. So when she stood at my wedding and claimed she was pregnant, I didn't need a test. I didn't need proof. I knew. I had known since childhood that Simona's greatest talent wasn't charm, beauty, or wit. It was manipulation. And the cruelest part. Everyone wanted to believe her, but the thing about lies is they rot the foundation they're built on. And even as I walked away from that wedding in pieces, some part of me knew one day the house she built out of deception would collapse. I just didn't know I'd be the one holding the match. I never doubted Peter. At least, not until the day of the wedding. Looking back, I can see the small cracks, but at the time, he was everything I thought I had been waiting for. We met at a coffee shop near the campus right after I finished college. I was buried in resumes, clutching my laptop and trying to figure out how to pay rent with a tiny paycheck from my internship. He was standing in line ahead of me. Tall, dark blonde hair with this way of looking at people like he really saw them. I dropped my phone, and instead of just handing it back, he bent down, picked it up, and smiled like the world wasn't rushing anywhere. That smile caught me off guard. I wasn't used to being noticed. Not when I was standing next to Simona, anyway. But he noticed me. We started talking that afternoon over paper cups of burnt coffee. He told me he worked in finance. Nothing glamorous, but steady. I told him about my internship, my dream of maybe opening something of my own one day. He didn't laugh. He didn't tell me to be realistic the way my parents always did. He just said, "You should. You'd be great at it." It was such a small thing, but for me, it was oxygen. For the first time, someone didn't measure me against my sister. He didn't ask about her. He didn't even know she existed yet. When I brought him home for the first time, I was nervous. My parents had never approved of anyone I dated. They always said things like, "You could do better," or "Don't waste your time on someone who won't provide." But Peter walked into our house with flowers for my mother, and a firm handshake for my father, and somehow he passed a test I never could. My mother smiled at him the way she only ever smiled at Simona. My father asked him about his job and actually listened. That night, after dinner, my mother whispered to me in the kitchen, "He's respectable. He'll take care of you." It was the closest thing to approval I had ever received. I wish I could tell you it didn't matter to me, that I was strong enough not to crave it. But the truth is, it felt like sunlight after years of shadows. And then, of course, there was Simona. She was 22 then, restless, dramatic, forever in between jobs. When she first met Peter, she tilted her head, gave him one of her trademark smiles, and said, "So you're the one who thinks my sister's funny." Like she couldn't quite believe anyone would. He laughed politely. He didn't flirt. He didn't encourage her. At least not in front of me. But I noticed the way she lingered in conversations with him, the way she leaned too close when she asked him questions, the way her hand brushed his sleeve as if by accident. Peter always pulled back, subtle but clear, and I convinced myself that was enough. "Simona's just Simona," he told me once when I asked if she was bothering him. "She likes attention. Don't let it get to you." And I wanted to believe him, because believing anything else meant admitting that my life was still orbiting around her gravity. Our relationship moved quickly. Within a year, Peter and I were living together in a small apartment downtown. It wasn't much, just 2 rooms and a balcony that rattled when the wind blew, but it felt like ours. He worked long hours, I picked up extra shifts, and we scraped by. But he always made time for me. He cooked when I was too tired. He left notes on the fridge. He remembered the name of every author I loved. He made me feel chosen. When he proposed on my 26th birthday in front of friends and family, I almost couldn't breathe. Not because of the ring, though it was beautiful, but because of the look on my parents' faces. Pride. Relief. Finally, their older daughter had done something worth noticing. For once, Simona wasn't the center of attention. For once, it was me. Except she didn't clap first. She didn't hug me right away. She just stood there, watching, eyes wide, lips pressed tight. And I should have recognized it for what it was, the beginning of her plan. But I didn't. I was too busy holding Peter's hand, too busy memorizing the way my father shook his shoulder with approval, too busy soaking in the warmth I had been starved of for so long. Peter and Simona never had much of a relationship. Not really. At least not before the wedding. He tolerated her, she poked at him. Sometimes she made jokes about how serious he was, how he and I were like an old married couple already. He smiled politely and let it slide, but I saw it, the spark in her eyes when she realized she could get under his skin. Simona didn't love Peter. I don't think she loved anyone but herself. What she loved was power, and the surest way to feel powerful in our family was to take something from me. I used to tell myself Peter would never fall for it, that his kindness was stronger than her cruelty, that he saw me, not her. And maybe that was true, until the day she forced him to choose. The irony is, I thought the wedding would be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day that proved just how wrong I was about both of them. I didn't doubt Peter before then, but I should have. Because the man I thought would fight for me hesitated. And that hesitation was enough to break everything. They say betrayal feels like a knife, but for me it felt more like silence. After the wedding shattered, I waited for someone, anyone, to reach out. My father, my mother, even Peter. Some explanation, some apology, some hand on my shoulder. But the only thing I got was silence, the kind that seeps into your bones and whispers, "You were never really one of us." At first, I stayed with Alex. She gave me her couch, her tea, her patience. She never asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. She just let me cry until my throat burned, until my eyes swelled shut, until sleep came like mercy. And when I woke, she would hand me coffee and say, "One step at a time, V." I clung to that, one step at a time. The first step was admitting my family had chosen Simona. They hadn't even tried to hide it. Word got around, because in families like mine, everything gets around, that they told people I was unstable, too emotional, not ready for marriage. that Simona had been brave for telling the truth. And Peter, well, he had simply followed his heart. Oh, I wasn't invited to the dinners. My calls went unanswered. Birthdays passed without a message. It was as if I had been erased, a character written out of their story. The second step was survival. I couldn't keep drowning in shame forever. I found work in a small bookstore, long hours shelving dusty volumes and ringing up customers who barely looked at me. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and in the quiet, I started to breathe again. Sometimes, though, I would pass a coffee shop or see a woman in a white dress through a shop window, and my chest would cave in. The ghost of what should have been hovered over everything. And then, one afternoon, Alex and I were sitting in her kitchen when she said, "You need something that's yours. Not theirs, not Peter's. Yours." She was right. That's how the idea for the cafe began. At first, it felt impossible. I had no money, no connections, no roadmap. But Alex believed in me. She invested the little she had saved. I scraped together loans, bargained with landlords, painted the walls with my own hands. It was messy, exhausting, terrifying, but it was mine. The first day we opened, I stood behind the counter in a secondhand apron, watching the door like my life depended on it. And when the first customer walked in, an old man with kind eyes who ordered black coffee, I nearly cried. Because for once, I was building something no one could take from me. Weeks became months. The cafe grew. People came back not just for the coffee, but for the feeling, the warmth, the quiet safety. And slowly I felt myself becoming whole again. That's when I heard about Peter and Simona. Not from my parents, of course not. They never spoke to me again after the wedding. I found out the way you always find out, through whispers, through mutual acquaintances, through the cruel efficiency of gossip. "They're married now," someone said at the bookstore. Peter and Simona. Did you know? I smiled like it didn't matter, like the words didn't sting. But inside, my stomach twisted. Later, I learned more. No child, no family of their own, just the two of them, locked together in whatever they had built from the ashes of mine. Part of me wanted to scream, "Serves you right." Another part of me wanted to know if Peter ever thought of me when he looked at her, if he ever wondered what life would have been if he hadn't hesitated, but I forced myself not to linger. Because every time I stepped into the cafe, I was reminded I had a new life. A life without their rules, their judgment, their cruelty. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I wasn't the shadow. I was Veronica, a woman who had lost everything and built something new from the rubble. Still, there were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering why the people who were supposed to love me had chosen her lies over my truth. And on those nights, the silence from my parents pressed harder than ever. But when the sun rose, I unlocked the cafe, brewed the first pot of coffee, and reminded myself, silence may haunt me, but it will never define me again. One step at a time, I was learning to live, and I had no idea that one day the ghosts I thought I'd left behind, Peter, Simona, even my parents, would come knocking on my door again. Imagine the worst fall of your life. The kind that strips you bare, takes your pride, your illusions, even your ability to trust your own reflection. Now imagine blinking and finding yourself rising. Not because someone carried you, but because you decided the ground wasn't where your story ended. That was me. By 32, I had done what my family never believed I could. I had built a small but thriving business with Alex, our cafe that smelled of cinnamon and fresh bread, that filled with the laughter of strangers who became regulars. I had put down a deposit on a house. My house, mine. And for the first time since Peter, I had fallen in love again, with Chris. A man who didn't hesitate when storms came, who looked at me like I was the answer, not the question. I was alive. I was strong. I was radiant. I was a phoenix, reborn from ashes. And just when my wings were stretched wide, just when I was soaring higher than I'd ever dreamed, someone grabbed my tail and yanked me back to earth. Peter? At first, it was just a text. "Hey, V, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need to say I'm sorry." I stared at it until the screen dimmed. My heart didn't race, my hands didn't shake. Mostly I felt annoyance, the audacity. I didn't respond. Then came the calls, I didn't answer. Then another text. I made a mistake. 6 years too late, but I see it now. And another. Simona and I, it's not what I thought. She's not who I thought. Please, can we talk? I laughed bitterly when I read that one. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly predictable. The house of lies my sister built was collapsing. And Peter, ever the man who couldn't stand alone, was trying to crawl back into mine. I deleted the messages, blocked his number. But snakes find cracks. He started calling from different phones, leaving voicemails that dripped with regret. V, I was wrong. I should have chosen you. Simona lied about everything. There was never a baby. I should have known. You've built a life. I can see that. I miss you. Every word was a shovel, digging up bones I'd buried. And then, as if fate wanted to test just how much I had healed, my parents came knocking. Not literally at my door, but close enough. A number I hadn't seen in years lit up my phone. My mother's voice, too sweet, too shaky. Veronica, it's your mother. Please don't hang up, we need to talk. Against my better judgment, I stayed silent on the line. She sighed, then went on. It's your sister. She's struggling. The marriage, it's not good. She needs stability. She needs help. I almost choked on the irony. The same woman who once called me a disappointment now wanted me to rescue her golden child. A few days later, my father called. His voice was as stern as ever, but underneath it was desperation. Veronica, listen. Simona doesn't have work. She's lost. If you could find it in your heart to take her on at your café, just until she gets back on her feet, it would mean the world to us. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Do you know what it's like when the people who exiled you suddenly realize you were the one who knew how to survive? When the same family who erased you tries to pencil you back into the story only because their favorite character has failed. I remembered the nights I cried on Alex's couch. The birthdays no one called. The silence that pressed so hard I thought it would crush me. And now, they wanted me to open my door to the woman who shattered my wedding, who stole my future, who smiled as I walked out in a dress that would never see vows. The audacity burned, but I didn't say no, not yet. Instead, I told them, I'll think about it. Because somewhere deep inside me, past the anger, past the scars, there was curiosity. Not about helping her, but about seeing Simona walk into my world, on my terms. To watch the sister who once strutted in the spotlight stumble into the place I built from nothing. Would I offer her a chance to earn her keep? Or would I let her see, up close, that the phoenix she tried to destroy now soared above her ashes? Peter thought his apologies could drag me back. My parents thought their pleas could soften me, but they had no idea this wasn't the same Veronica they had betrayed. This was the Veronica who rose from the fire. And maybe, just maybe, it was time for them to feel the burn. The bell above the cafe door rang on an ordinary afternoon. I was wiping down the counter, the smell of fresh muffins in the air, when I looked up and froze. Peter? For a moment, it was as if 6 years collapsed into a single heartbeat. Same shoulders, same eyes, the same careful way he scanned the room before landing on me. Only now there was something different. A heaviness. A man carrying the weight of his own regrets. He walked to the counter, slow, hesitant. Hi, V. I didn't answer. I just crossed my arms and waited. He shifted on his feet, cleared his throat. You look good, better than good. I'm glad. Stop, I cut in. Whatever speech you've been rehearsing, save it. Let's skip to the part where you tell me why you're here. His jaw tightened. For a second, he looked like he might bolt. But instead he leaned forward, palms flat on the counter. I made mistakes. The biggest of my life. I should have chosen you. I should have believed you, and I slammed the rag onto the counter. Don't you dare. Don't you dare pretend this is fresh guilt. The truth about Simona's pregnancy. It came out almost immediately. Everyone knew. Everyone but me, apparently. And you stayed. 6. Damn. Years. The cafe went quiet. Even Alex, stacking plates in the back, stopped. Peter's face crumpled. You think I didn't want to leave? You think I didn't try? Every time I packed a bag, every time I thought I was done, she'd tell me she was pregnant again, or that she was sick, or that she'd kill herself if I walked out the door, and like an idiot, I believed her. I thought I was doing the right thing. I laughed, bitter and sharp. The right thing? You mean the easy thing. You mean the coward's thing. 6 years, Peter. 6 years of excuses. And now you stand in my cafe, in my life, asking for what? Forgiveness. A second chance. He shook his head quickly. No, not a second chance. I know I don't deserve that. God, V, I needed you to know I see it now. I see her for who she is. And I see you for who you always were. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man who once held my hand in the glow of Christmas lights. The man I thought would fight for me. The man who hesitated when it mattered most. And all I felt was disappointment. Not heartbreak, not anger, just a deep, hollow disappointment. You know what's sad, Peter, I said softly. I'm not disappointed in you as a fiancé. I'm disappointed in you as a human being. I thought you were smarter. I thought you had more backbone. Turns out you're just another man who let my sister write the script of his life. He opened his mouth, but no words came. He nodded once, turned, and walked out the door. The bell jingled as it closed behind him. And I felt lighter. 2 days later, the past came calling again. This time, in the shape of my parents. They entered the cafe like they owned it, scanning the decor, the menu boards, the smiling faces of my staff. My mother smoothed her coat. My father clasped his hands behind his back. Veronica, my mother began, voice dripping with practiced sweetness. We're so proud of what you've built here. I raised an eyebrow, cut to the chase. My father cleared his throat. It's Simona. She's in a difficult place. She needs structure. She needs work. We thought, perhaps, you could offer her a position here, something to help her get back on her feet. I almost laughed in their faces, but instead I leaned on the counter, smiled, and said, Fine. I'll take her on one condition. Their eyes lit up, relief flooding too quickly. Of course, yapay, my mother said. Anything. She'll start as a cleaner, I continued. Bathrooms, floors, dishes, the jobs nobody else wants. She'll earn what my student interns earn, barely enough for bus fare. She'll clock in, she'll clock out, and if she quits, she quits. No special treatment, no corner office, no sympathy. The color drained from my mother's face. My father stiffened. Veronica, surely you don't mean... Oh, I do. I leaned closer. You asked me to help her. That's the help I'm willing to give. If she wants to prove she can stand on her own 2 feet, this is her chance. If not, that's her choice. They exchanged glances, anger, humiliation, disbelief swirling in their eyes. Finally, my father muttered, She'll manage. My mother's lips pressed into a tight line. Yes, she'll do it. I smiled. Good. Then we have a deal. As they left, I caught my reflection in the cafe window. The girl who once begged for their approval was gone. In her place was a woman who set the rules, who held the power, who no longer needed their love to validate her worth. Simona was about to step into my world, and this time she would play by my rules. Call me a bad sister. Call me a vengeful bitch. I don't care. Because when Simona walked into my cafe on her first day of work, and I greeted her with the sweetest, most poisonous smile I could muster, it felt like justice finally had a face. She looked nothing like the girl who once stole my fiancé under a crown of roses. Back then, she was radiant, smug, glowing with the thrill of destruction. Now, she looked beaten, worn, older than me, though she was 2 years younger. Her eyes were ringed with fatigue, her hair limp, her clothes plain and lifeless. It was almost funny. She had spent years building her happiness on the ruins of mine. She thought she had won. That stealing Peter meant she'd taken my future too, but no. She had gambled everything on a lie, and the house she built collapsed right on top of her. And now she was here, in my world, playing by my rules. "Welcome to your first day," I said, my voice sugar-sweet, a smile tugging at the corners of my lips. "The mop's in the back closet." "Don't be late." Her jaw clenched, but she didn't argue. She couldn't. Not with our parents already backing the deal, not with her life in shambles. She just nodded and disappeared into the back, returning with a bucket and a rag. And just like that, the golden child was scrubbing floors. At first, the staff didn't know what to make of her. They'd heard whispers. Alex had made sure of that, but they didn't dare ask questions. They watched as she bent down, knelt on her knees, and wiped footprints from the tiles. Some smirked. Some looked away, embarrassed for her. But Alex made it her personal mission to make sure Simona earned every cent of her pathetic intern wage. "Oops," Alex said loudly one afternoon. "Spilled sugar again?" "Could you get that, Simona?" Minutes later, "Coffee grounds all over the floor. Better mop it before someone slips." And then, with a sly grin, Alex carried in crates she could have handled herself, stacking them right where Simona had just cleaned, forcing her to start over. Simona's hands grew raw from chemicals. Her back ached from bending. She had once been the center of every room, but now she was invisible, treated like the dust she wiped away. And I let it happen. Because every swipe of that rag, every scrape of that mop was another piece of balance restored. Still, the sharpest moment came at closing time one night. I was standing by the counter counting the till when Chris walked in to meet me. He leaned across the counter, kissed me, asked if I was ready to go home. My heart warmed the way it always did with him, steady, sure, real. And just a few feet away, Simona was on her knees, scrubbing a dark stain of spilled coffee from the floor. Her hands were wet, her knees pressed into the tiles, her hair falling into her face. She froze for a second, then glanced up at us. Me, smiling, loved, successful, untouchable. Her, broken, small, on the ground of my café. For a moment, I almost pitied her, almost. But then I remembered my wedding dress stained with tears. My parents turning their backs. 6 years of silence. So no, I didn't pity her. I simply turned back to Chris, laced my fingers with his, and let her kneel. Because the truth was undeniable now. The sister who once destroyed my life was cleaning floors in the cafe I built. And I, the forgotten daughter, the abandoned bride, the erased child, I had risen. I was the phoenix, and she was ashes at my feet.